I certainly have a super packed agenda today. So today I've got to get the motor back in the car because everything is all buttoned up on it now. There's new motor mounts, new oil pan, new clutch, oil separator plates all done. Just got to do a couple of little quick things on it right before it can go back. For example, there's oil like all over that cam position sensor. So I'm going to clean that all up and clean any other oil deposits up that I found on the motor. I've also still got to get that oil dipstick tube off of the old oil pan, transfer it into the new oil pan with appropriate seals. And I've also got to go underneath the car and get that whole new trans mount put in. It's probably going to take at least an hour to get that trans mount done. So let's jump into it and see where we end up today. So while I was down here, I noticed that there's supposed to be 4 trans mount bolts. This one guy's missing here. These 2 are there. That one's there. So I've been running on 3 of these bolts. Probably not a huge deal, but I wonder how much pressure or stress that puts on this bolt. So I'm going to take them all out, figure out what's going on. I've got to see if I can get these 2 rusty nuts off of here, and then somehow maybe lift the transmission up here with a jack and a piece of wood or something, and see if I can get this mount out without having to take all this stuff off. I don't know if that's possible, but I'm going to give it a try. Alright, I have a drill bit for this. So I got the old trans mount out, and new one's going in. As you can see, this one's a lot more solid on the inside, and this one isn't. This one's also very loose, very worn. Unfortunately, I snapped off one of the bolts in there, that one side that was missing. Of course, that's where I snapped it off. So I'm going to try to extract that out of the transmission and replace them with some new bolts that I just picked up from the hardware store. Then get this bad Johnny back in so we can start getting that motor in. Now that the trans mount has been replaced, it's time to move on to the engine. As I mentioned in my previous video, I snapped off one of the studs here, so I'm going to try to drill and extract that stud. I've got a whole new stud and nut kit because the studs on the other side, well, I think they have certainly seen better days, but the camera doesn't seem to want to focus on them. There they are. Yeah, those things are not in great condition, so I'm going to get those out, as well as put new ones in here as well. 1, 2, skip a few, the engine's back in the car. So I didn't have time to film the whole install process. It's pretty much back in. I'm trying to pull the spark plug here. Probably should have done that when it was off. And I'll do the spark plug over there for cylinder 1 and 2 to see what's going on, because I've got some kind of misfire in there, and I want to check everything before I put it all back together. I'm missing a bolt for the alternator, the vanity cover thing, all those bolts are somehow missing as well. Starter bolt, something's up with that, I gotta figure that out. And then pretty much just put everything back together, get a couple of hose clamps for fuel line, heater core hose, and replacing the radiator upper and lower hose and putting new clamps on them as well. So now I'm almost done, but I ran into a couple issues. I lost the bolts for the oil fill tube, so I went out and I got some bolts, which ended up being a hair too long, so I'm going to trim them down a size. So for some reason the starter bolt kind of goes into where you see this darkness here. Sorry, the camera does not want to focus on that. And then it just kind of stops. So I don't want to take out the motor to try to run a tap down the block, because I just got it back in. So I'm stacking washers, which is a horrible and stupid idea. I don't recommend it. But $900 Subaru, everybody. You do what you can. And there we go. Bolts installed in there and on there. Looking all nice and new, nice and tight. So here's something I didn't know. On these air boxes, like these secondary air boxes here, there's another air filter in them. Apparently not all the Subarus came with this secondary air filter. There might have been like a gasket in there. So that one is pretty dirty. I'm gonna go ahead and replace that. I think I got one that fits. If that doesn't end up fitting, I'm gonna leave the part number in the description below for that, or a link to it. There's definitely some interesting things in here, like seeds of sorts, and this seal was all kind of cracked and broken all the way around, so I could be having some issues from there, especially if unmetered air is getting through. So this new piece does fit. Yes, it's a Fram. I know we don't like Fram, nobody does, but this is the part you'll need. But remember, this is a $900 Subaru. This is this right here is a performance beast, buddy. Another issue I found could be leading to my misfire. This vacuum line is super loose. I put a zip tie on there that didn't do anything. This one's very important because it goes to the fuel pressure regulator, and it could be what's causing my issue. So I'm definitely going to be replacing these as soon as I fire this thing up and know that everything's all right with it. And if not, Hey, there's another project on the way. Look at that, almost right back where we were in day one. I just replaced the oil filter. I also did the radiator hoses, upper and lower. Had to cut the lower one to fit, the Rock Auto part. Apparently the parts store ones do not fit. So yeah, it's time to put some oil in here. Time to put the coolant in. Burp the system and hope like crazy it does not leak. Just in case it does, I did put an oil pan or an oil drip pan under there. So we're gonna go ahead and see. Coolant is almost full. Of course I'm gonna have to burp it and bleed it and all that. Oil is full. What I'm gonna do now is go ahead and start the car. I might actually pull the plug wires first and give it a couple of cranks. That way it builds up some oil pressure before I go ahead and fire it. Or, you know, just disconnecting the coil works pretty good too. Everything's plugged back in. I gave it a couple of cranks. So now we're gonna go ahead and see if it starts. Might not have fuel pressure just yet. Alright, so I'm guessing something's a little weird. We're gonna go and check things out. After listening to it again and again, it sounded like there was more of a vacuum leak than anything. So I took this off and I realized, well, I kind of screwed up here. So I'm gonna put this back on the right way and then try again. That looks like it's sealed a lot better all the way around. I am missing a clip from the previous owner, so or maybe the owner before him, who knows. So I'm using a zip tie kind of like they did. Hopefully that'll be good enough. Eventually I'll get the right part for that. Let's see if that was a ticket. Oh, maybe not. Maybe. We'll find out. I'm gonna let it run for a little while, see if it throws any codes or does anything weird, burp the coolant, the usual stuff, and we'll check right back in. Alright, so the cylinder 1 and 2 misfire did not go away. Kind of as expected, but gotta figure that one out. May have to replace the ignition coil or swap it with a known good one to see what's up. So that's gonna do it for this video because it starts, did what I had to do. Now the next video is going to be chasing down that misfire in cylinders 1 and 2. So far the only codes I get is misfire cylinder 1 and 2, which doesn't really narrow it down. The plugs both look fine, the plug wires look pretty good. So it's either going to be the coil or possibly the fuel pressure regulator, injectors or something, maybe even the fuel pump. So let's find out in the next episode when we come back to that Forester. Thank you for watching. Make sure to give it a thumbs up if you liked it. Share it with your friends. Leave a comment below. Maybe if you have an idea of what's going on, that would be super helpful. And as always, remember to keep it foul. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button too. That's majorly helpful.